Okay, I'm being advised of the time. So for those watching tonight's meeting virtually, the meeting is available to live stream via the Park District website. All information about Park District meetings can be found at winpark.org under the Park District Info tab by selecting Board Meetings and Videos. Public comment is accepted in person. A link to the video and audio will be posted immediately following this evening's meeting. To improve the sound while listening to the meeting, please turn up the volume on your computer and turn up the volume on the website. The meeting packet for tonight's meeting is located on the website. For those attending tonight's meeting, the emergency exits from the room are at the door behind you or through the foyer. To improve the quality of the sound, there's a boom microphone directed towards the commissioners. The microphone will pick up additional audience noise and sidebar conversations. If it's difficult to hear, please feel free to move to the front row. This is a business meeting, not a sporting event. The board asks for your cooperation to maintain decorum. We are a community coming together to discuss difficult issues in a civil and respectful fashion. May I have the opening roll call, please?
Commissioner James?
Here.
Commissioner Lesson?
Here.
Commissioner Rapp? Here. Commissioner Root? Here. Commissioner Tyson?
Here.
Commissioner Hemmings is absent, and Commissioner Cotto?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call to order the December 5th, 2024 special board meeting. A little bit out of order, sorry. Public announcements. Shannon.
Of course.
So the annual Winnetka tree lighting will begin at 5 p.m. tomorrow night at Dwyer Park. Join the community for a time-honored tradition of carols, treats, and the lighting of the tree, which will take place at approximately 6 p.m. This is in conjunction with the Village of Winnetka and the Chamber of Commerce. On Saturday, the Winnetka Park District will be hosting the Alvin the Elf's Winter Carnival at Spooky School on Saturday, December 7th from 10 a.m. to noon. There will also be an Ugly Sweater Holiday Skate on Saturday, December 14th at 2 p.m. at the Winnetka Ice Arena. We hope to see you at these community events. And as a reminder, the administrative office will close at 1 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, for staff to attend a holiday luncheon. That's it.
Thank you. Approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any requests for changes to the agenda? Seeing no changes, may I have a motion to approve the December 5th agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Public comment. This is your opportunity to address the board on any issue. When called upon, come to the center position in front of the commissioners. Stand at the podium, speak loudly into the microphone, state your name for the record, and speak directly to the board. Based on the public comment policy described in the board policy manual and referenced in Public Access Counselor Opinion 2024 PAC 81900, guests may present public comment for no longer than 3 minutes after being recognized. If you prefer to share your comments in writing this evening, you may do so by leaving them with a member of the Park District staff. We have anyone who would like to make a public comment? Excellent. Our one audience member declines. Perfect. Item number 3, presentations. 3.1, fiscal year 2025 proposed budget, Jim Crocker.
Thank you, Commissioner Cotto, and fellow commissioners. I appreciate you all being here on such a chilly night tonight. For those who are viewing remotely or who may not have seen previous meetings, brief introduction. In previous meetings, we looked at different components of the overall budget. Tonight, we're going to synthesize those different components into an overview of the 2025 budget, and then go through the different funds to talk about some of the changes that we've made since we started the presentation 2 months ago. So without further ado, we're going to go into the 2025 budget presentation. The presentation is divided into 3 sections. The first, as I mentioned a moment ago, is an overview of the revised 2025 budget. The second section will be a fund-by-fund review to discuss any changes we've made since we started the presentations. And the third will be an updated 2025 capital plan based on changes that have been made to the budget. So section 1, the general overview. For 2025, we are projecting approximately $19,446,334 in overall revenue. Oop, too fast. Trying to get the. There it is. The tax levy that was passed at the November 21st meeting accounts for most of the tax income projected here. Interest is based off of investments the Park District has. These are separate from the 2020 bond issuances and are not going to be affected by the arbitrage issue that we've discussed at previous meetings. User fees encompasses all Park District people using the resources. Recreation program fees are registration fees that are collected. We're projecting $3 million worth of capital revenues based on a pledge donation to the Park District for Elder and Centennial projects. Miscellaneous income, which includes the food and beverage concessions from the golf course, Park Kemper Sports, pro shop sales throughout the Park District, totaling the $19,446,334 we show here. This is a better visual aspect of where the revenues are coming from. As you'll see, user fees make up the largest portion of the revenues we're projecting for 2025. Against those revenues, we are projecting $15,334,768 in operating expenses. That includes salaries and wages, supplies. Other personnel is benefits for Park District personnel, repairs and maintenance, program and maintenance services, corporate services, utilities, pro shop merchandise, and debt service payments. This includes a merit pool of 4%, which is built into the budget, salaries and wages portion. We are showing a 6% increase in medical insurance. That's in the other personnel category here. And then again, the corporate services includes the Kemper Sports management fee, which is contracted. Moving on, the operating and major capitals for 2025, as we talked about at the long-range plan. We are projecting $20,137,854 in capitals, both operating and major, for the 2025 fiscal year. And here is another visual pie chart showing our expenses. The capital expenditures budgeted are the lion's share, followed by salaries and wages. And, I'm not sure why the titles were cut off of the slide. Apologize for that. I'm not sure what happened there. We can get that corrected when we post this on the website.
It's correct in the packet.
Oh, is it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this is an overview of the budget that we are presenting and projecting for 2025. We took a conservative approach to our beginning reserves. This is based on the end of the 2024 budget down here. When we get to the end of the calendar year, I expect this will be higher, but we took a conservative approach for budgeting purposes. The revenue is the operating revenue that we projected a few slides ago. These are the operating expenses. Your net operating income, when you subtract one from the other, leaves you a little over $1.1 million. The capital expenses, $20,137,854. Here's your capital revenue, $3 million. Net fund income, a projected loss of $16 million based on the capital expenditures we budgeted. Our ending reserves show then $2,121,099. Okay, moving on. This is similar to the previous slide, a couple of subtle differences. Here is the ending reserves we projected in the previous slide. These are restricted reserves, mostly comprised of the special non-operating funds that we have, special recreation, liability, debt service, etc., leaving us with unrestricted reserves of $790,344. Our minimum policy reserve is $3.8 million, $3,833,692, based on our operating expenditures. And we're showing available reserves here of 0. This is based on the overall expenditures and the capital expenditures. I want to remind the board and those watching, we budgeted for over $15 million at Elder and Centennial for 2025, knowing we are not going to spend all that money in 2025 fiscal year. We're going to plan on spending it over the next 3 years. But because it shows up in the 2025 budget, we had to compute this, including that number, which is why we are showing 0 at the bottom. And again, we started with a conservative estimate on our beginning reserves. As we get closer to the end of the year, I expect this available reserve number to be positive. Are there any questions so far I've presented? Yes, Commissioner Rapp. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Commissioner Coda's responsibility, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does anyone else have one?
No. Yeah.
I had a few questions. Under operating expenses, I just wanted to highlight again, even though Executive Director Nizal and Mr. Crocker provided me mountains of wage and payroll data, I still can't quite tie out exactly where everything is going. I just wanted to confirm a few things. One is the bonus number that is in the budget inclusive of all employee bonuses.
All except for KPI, which would be in those funds for tennis and ice.
Okay, but they're not separately identified on tennis and ice, correct?
They're within the, I believe they're in the salaries and wages line.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, even though in those there are separate bonus lines that are 0. Is that right?
I can go back and check. I don't have the entire budget in
Okay.
front of me right now.
Okay. And then, yeah, now I can just talk through a little bit about the question. I mean, it looks like golf is accounting for, let's say, 500,000. So there's still 500,000 that's like other stuff. And so
Are you
I'm just
speaking about the salaries and wages?
for salaries
line?
and wages.
Okay, I did send an email to commissioners maybe about 20-30 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
So about 241,000 is the 4% merit pool. We had a missing position that is already filled. That was missing from the budget previously. It's in the presentation tonight. That's about 51,000. The Cook County Paid Leave Act is about 54,000. There is a requested position tier change of about 4,500. That's also in the presentation. The 96,000 in bonus. Golf had an increase in staffing of just over 332,000, and then about 285 is the minimum wage increase.
Okay, I'll be happy to look at that. Is the 241,000 inclusive of all the salaries or just the full-time?
It's 4% for the salary line item.
Okay, because my understanding is that was applicable to the full-time wages for the merit increase because the hourlies are also subject to the minimum wage increase of $1 per hour, which is
If you'd like us to get
So-
more information on that, because I was given this information that you requested today, I didn't have enough time, unfortunately, to get all
Okay.
of that together for you, so I gave you approximate numbers.
Okay, yeah, no, I definitely would like to understand that because that sounds pretty generous. Okay. And then in operating and major capitals, it looked like there was a truck that was in a prior budget, like 275,000 that was in a prior budget, which was not in this current iteration. Are we receiving those trucks this year?
We received 2 trucks, 2 vehicles out of the 4 that were ordered, and 2 are being deferred into next year as presented.
Okay, so it is really, there are no trucks coming in 2025?
No additional trucks. We
Okay.
did receive 2 that we are expecting to. The other 2
Okay.
that we knew we would not, as we presented with the budget in the LRP or in the budget for 2025, based on those fees, or based on those costs, excuse me.
Okay. And then I think for these sections. Okay, I have other questions, but I will save them until we get to their section. Oh, what was the number for legal?
I don't have the specific line. I believe it's about $225,000, but I don't have
Okay.
the specific line item data in front of me, so we can get that to you. We can follow up with
Okay,
that
no, I could
information.
probably find it, but
That's
it's
a
in the
good one to track.
documentation that we've provided.
Yeah.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Carry on.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a fund-by-fund review now to talk about the changes we've made since we started the presentations. First will be the General Administrative Fund. We are projecting revenue in this fund of $4,391,759 against operating expenses of $4,363,038. Net operating income then would be $28,721. We're projecting $490,700 in operating capital expenses. Transfer out of $381,000. That's $310,000 to Elder and Centennial, and $71,000 to the Golf Fund. Total expenses $5,234,738. Net fund projected loss of $842,979, leaving us with ending reserves of about $1,567,146, which is still above the 25% minimum fund reserve requirement we need to maintain per policy. Specific changes, as Executive Director Nizal discussed a few moments ago, here are some of the changes that have been made since the first presentation. We had double counted debt service fund taxes in 2 places, so we reduced it here to reflect the actual number in the 3600 fund. This is the existing part-time position that is currently filled but was omitted from the first presentation. Executive Director Nizal mentioned that a few moments ago. We were able to reduce our original estimation of the Cook County part-time paid leave based on consultation with Corp Counsel. Our medical insurance expenses came down after we revised our estimate based on feedback from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We had a data entry correction of $2,000 for capital expenses in the administrative. And then transfer out to golf. Originally, we had budgeted $288,131. After Kemper made their adjustments, that transfer was reduced to $71,000. And then we will monitor that closely depending on golf's revenue and expense projections. If the revenues exceed projections or expenses come in lower, this number may go down. Expense, salaries, and wages. We added $4,500 for a possible elevation of a Tier 2 position to a Tier 3 position. And then we transferred $15,051 from the Outdoor Ice Fund to this account. After the original presentation, it was decided to zero out that account and put the salary information where the employees are actually stationed. Same thing with the supplies, the program and maintenance expense, utilities, and allocations. These all came from the 1300 Outdoor Ice Fund. We added a $30,000 capital for a zero-turn riding mower. It was entered into the LRP request, but it was omitted from the original presentation. The court resurfacing work at Hap Road Playground came in higher than we expected, significantly higher, unfortunately, so we adjusted that estimation. And then we had a $7,000 Skokie Playfield paver work that was entered into the original request but omitted from the original presentation. So all these numbers are reflected in the changes that you see in the general fund overview in this column here. Right, so those are the changes for the corporate fund. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions regarding that specific information.
And I would confirm from the previous question that legal is budgeted, currently proposed at 225.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, since I see no questions, I'm going to move on to the recreation fund here. Recreation, benefiting from being the last group that was presented in mid-November. Most of the changes we were making to the budget were built into this presentation when we showed it to you on November 14th. So we are reflecting no changes to the recreation fund based on what we presented on November 14th. The golf fund, after we worked with Kemper, they came back to us with increased revenue, lower operating expenses, with a net operating income of $411,000. They reduced their capital plan by $87,000. We reduced then our transfer in from $298,131 to $71,000, reflecting total expenses of $2,857,890, a net fund income of $250,838, showing ending reserves of $606,227. This is slightly below the $656,598 we are required to maintain at 25% of the operating expenses. However, as we did in previous slides, we took a conservative estimate to the beginning reserves based on the end of the 2024 budget. We have not gotten the final revenue estimates from Kemper yet. I expect this number to be higher at the end of the year, which will drive this number up as well. Again, these will be monitored closely. If this number falls below the $656,598, we may have to transfer additional funds from the corporate fund. I'm not anticipating that will happen, but again, we budgeted conservatively with the beginning reserves, which is why you're seeing this number below the minimum reserve. Right. These are the specific changes to the golf fund based on our previous presentation. Kemper Sports increased their fees for buckets at the driving range. They expect that to generate an additional $50,708 in revenue. They increased the food and beverage prices slightly to generate an additional $20,278 in revenue. We reduced the transfer by $227,131. They were able to reduce their salaries and wages by $15,000 and reduce their capital request by $87,000 by deferring some of those capitals to future years. Right. Are there any questions regarding the golf fund presentation at this point? Seeing no questions, I'm going to continue. All right. Indoor and outdoor tennis. Again, by virtue of the fact they were one of the last enterprise funds presented, most of the changes had already been input before we presented to the board, so we are projecting no changes to the tennis fund from our original presentation on November 14th. And you'll see that even with the high capital expenditures, we are projecting an ending reserve well above the $514,000 required under part district policy. Platform tennis fund, we had one minor adjustment. We adjusted the allocations slightly, $4,330 increase in the operating expenses, but we still have reserves above the 25% minimum. And here is the detail. We adjusted after outdoor ice was zero out, we had to adjust allocations. And this went up by $4,330. Moving on to the ice arena. Again, we project no changes from the original presentation on November 14th. And the ending reserves are still well above the $243,934 based on our operating expenses for the ice arena fund. Capital projects, we made a minor adjustment here. We separated out some of the revenue. We have the $3 million pledge donation to Elder and Centennial, and we moved $1 million down here to transfers in to reflect the $310,000 from the corporate fund and the $690,000 from the recreation fund. We did this for clarity and to better delineate where the revenues are coming from for the major capitals fund. Once again, for the capital expenditures, this includes over $15 million for Elder and Centennial, which is budgeted in 25, but we do not expect to spend all in 2025. Okay. And then special recreation and the other non-operating funds. There were no changes to these funds compared to the original presentation, with one exception. The one exception would be in the liability and insurance fund. In 2024, we had a portion of an employee's salary budgeted here for safety coordinator. It's been moved out to the corporate fund where the rest of the salary belongs. So the medical expenses that had been budgeted here originally have been moved out as part of the reduction of the overall medical insurance reduction of 11% to 6%. So that's why you're seeing a $7,758 reduction in this fund. And then in the debt service fund, there were no changes based on the original presentation. Finally, before I go into the revised capital plan, are there any questions regarding the special non-operating funds?
What is anticipated to be spent in capital for Elder Centennial during 2025?
I'm going to ask Costa to weigh in here, but I believe that depends on when the permits are issued.
That is
and go into bid. Okay.
That's correct. There are some soft costs that will continue to be incurred through that permit process. There's additional costs that could go through permitting and the permit applications for the state and federal regulatory agencies. As far as the physical construction costs, right now I would venture a guess that we're probably not going to be able to expense on the construction cost, but we would expense on the permitting cost as we move forward through that process.
May I continue with my question?
Sure.
Commissioner James has identified a serious safety condition both at Elder and Centennial.
Is this budget driven?
I understand it is. I have reached out to Executive Director DeZal. I've asked her to look at what it would cost, just back of the envelope, and this may be for you, Costa, if we were to take advantage of some of the synergy with the Kenilworth project that will launch this spring, and maybe be able to share some equipment to remove the dangers, the concrete and the steel, and whether that could be specifically identified in this 2025 budget. And this is simply looking at this to see if the opportunity availed itself to remove such a pressing hazard.
I think we've had this conversation before about the halfway measures, and I think that Costa has opined, and I think that there has been email traffic back and forth that has clarified that in fact it's not advisable financially to do a halfway measure. Costa, I'll let you respond fully.
The biggest cost would be mobilization. I couldn't tell you whether or not we'd be able to share that synergy with Kenilworth, because the cost would be over our bid thresholds. So we would have to formally go out to bid and try to adapt that into a contract that's pre-existing or potentially could be existing with their future work. I'm not sure how that would work. I'd have to research and understand that better. As far as the ability to remove some of the safety hazards that were identified at both beaches, once again, the safety hazards as they're presented at Elder are not as present because the beach site is closed. So with the beach sites closed and staying closed, those hazards are still there, but they're not as, they're not productive in regards to people using that site. The hazards identified at Centennial Park, those hazards are buried hazards in the sand, they're concrete. Once again, mobilizing equipment without being able to get down Elder and cross 261, we would have to mobilize Marine Base to complete that work. That would come at a very high cost for mobilization of equipment as well as the removal process. We would also have to engage with permitting agencies to permit that work for the removals. Both the IDNR, the Corps, and I believe the village would have to opine as well. So not only would we have to incur the permitting process, the fees associated with that, but also the additional fees to take this on in as suggested, a half measure, if you will, versus waiting for our plan to come to fruition, where we can execute on the plan as it's been designed and hopefully will be approved.
Question, if this was deemed an emergency operation, would I'm
going to stop you right there, because we've had this conversation in email traffic all week.
Well,
and it's not.
we have, but the public has
Point
not
of
heard.
order. Point
Madam
of order.
Chair.
This is a budget discussion, and it is not an emergency. The beach is closed. We're going to move on.
With respect,
We're
with
going
due
to move
respect,
on.
I will say one thing and then I will be quiet. This beach at Elder has been continuously used. Our youth uses it. I know we have discussed.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Okay?
It has been
I'm going to stop you right
continuously
there.
used.
Point of order.
Okay.
Carry
Thank
on.
you, Costa.
Thank you, Commissioner Cotto. What we're doing now, Section 3, is a review of the revised capital plan for the 2025 budget. Here's a summary of the projected expenses by fund. You'll see the total here, 2137,854, reflects the numbers we discussed earlier in the presentation. Here is a item-by-item breakdown per fund. You'll see various items, park property surveys we discussed previously, equipment, paving, recreation fund, we talked about these previously as well, park property surveys, lakefront water service, other items. Golf operations, these are the reduced capitals based on the revised presentation. Some clubhouse renovations, some of the necessary equipment, including work for the cart barn, which is necessary and mandatory. And then we get to platform tennis, some deck and railing work, the tennis fund. All this was previously discussed when we talked about tennis at the previous presentation on November 14th. Budgeted a little extra money for the indoor ice arena sound system. We have 88 capitals budgeted here. And then the major capitals, here's the $15,806,354 we've budgeted for Elder and Centennial. But once again, we do not anticipate spending that entire amount in 2025. That ends the presentation. Are there any questions regarding the revised capital presentation as shown?
Cynthia? No?
Someone else go first. Park property surveys, can you just review again the increase to 114,000, exactly what that is? Because I know previous iterations had it around like 39 or 40.
Well, I believe, and again, I don't have the line items here in front of me, but I believe the Skokie Playfield complex as a whole was by itself $75,000. And we had two other parks. And I think Costa, if you would be so kind as to specify which ones those are. Okay, thank you.
Bear with me a moment. If you want to move on to the next question, I'll
Okay.
get that
Okay.
information for you.
Yes, and then the other question that I had is, I noticed that the Tower Road Playground funding was dropped by 100,000, and then the 600,000 for the Elder Playground was removed. So can you just comment on that?
The $600,000 for the Elder Playground was always planned for 2026. It was incorrectly added in the 2025 column. So we moved that to 2026 where it more appropriately belongs. And the first one you mentioned that was reduced, can you
Tower Road, I think, was originally in at 400,000, and now it's in at 300,000.
Okay. To go back to see. See which one that's. Oh, is that under major capitals, I believe?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Tower Road Playground.
I wasn't aware of that change, to be perfectly honest. So I would need to refer to Jim and understand. We need to go back and take a look at that.
We'll have to go back and take a look at that one, and we'll get you an answer to that one.
Okay.
Commissioner Rapp.
While Costa's looking, I just have one comment. We're budgeting $1.4 million for the Skokie Playfield renovation, and that line item is the turf replacement, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And we will, while we're budgeting that, we'll have further discussion as to what type of turf and all the various considerations over the new and improved
Yeah.
surfaces.
Yeah, that's a big discussion.
Staff is reviewing the different opportunities that are out there with the industry changes. Technology has come a long way over the course of the, since our fields were originally installed. Different kinds of infills have been identified. Infill list turf has been identified as well, where there's shot pads underneath. So we're looking through all those different options. We're gonna be setting up site meetings. We've been talking to vendors. We might not necessarily go in through a bid process. If we identify their selection through a co-op, or if there's an opportunity through a joint purchasing agreement where there's better savings to the agency, we would be looking to exhaust those as possibilities as well. But all that information would be brought forward to the park board and ultimately decided upon with a vote.
Great, thank you.
That is a much-needed replacement. Well, I feel a lot. So it's great. So one of our best assets here.
Commissioner Rea? Go ahead.
Did you have a
Commissioner
question? I just had one recap question,
Okay.
but you go ahead.
Just for those listening, the Skokie Playfield renovation, how much of that 1.4 million is accrued already from the other agreements? I know some of it was.
There's 900,000 that's restricted.
Okay.
Correct.
Commissioner Root?
For the benefit of those listening, the ADA capital of 200,000, will you explain what that includes, please?
The $200,000 in the Special Recreation Fund for ADA capitals is for work at Elder and Centennial. The best way I can describe this is if we are putting in something at a basic cost and there are opportunities to add ADA components to that, the differential can be paid out of the Special Recreation Fund. That's what this money is being reserved for, is those differentials to make everything ADA compliant, above and beyond basic construction.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Did you find your answer?
Yeah, so
Excellent.
Pryorland, Hubbard Woods, and Skokie Playfield site are the sites identified for the property surveys.
Thank you very much.
So that was part of the 25 budget on October 24th.
Any other questions regarding the presentation? Unfinished business? None? New business? Done. Commissioner comments? We're limiting commissioner comments to 3 minutes. Jeff, Commissioner Tyson, I'll start with you.
Nothing to add.
Excellent. Commissioner Lawson?
Come back to me.
Okay. Commissioner Root?
I want to thank the ICE recreation team for the wonderful free skate on Thanksgiving. It's always so well attended, and it's very much appreciated by the dads and the kids while mom is cooking. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Rapp?
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner James?
A few weeks back, I made a presentation that identified certain hazards, known and others that might be unknown, at Elder. And for the benefit of the public, to spare a 40-page and lengthy presentation, I did do something similar for Centennial. Did not present it this evening, but I did distribute it to the board, and I think that was part of what prompted some of the comments from Commissioner Root. It is important for the public to know that the hazards that we've discovered at Centennial predate the ownership from the Park District. They go back to the 1950s or earlier, and we simply have found them more recently because the sand has been eroded, revealing these hazards. So it is, I think Commissioner Rapp and I discovered some of the concrete in a site visit in April of '23. And again, it's not safe. Please do not try and swim or venture out into the water at Centennial or Elder until we can clean the beaches. In the coming weeks, I'll send you another presentation, images I've taken off of Google Earth between 2013 and 2023 to show the changes in the North Shore beaches. And I hope that will be further illustrative of the importance of having some beach preservation techniques. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson? Okay. I have a comment.
Madam
You've
Chair.
already had one by the
But
VFO.
my name was raised and something was inferred to me that is incorrect. I'd
Point of
like to
order.
correct the record.
Point of order. You've had your chance.
I
Everyone has
understand
prepared
that,
their
but
comments.
we have a fellow commissioner who has raised a point saying this is what I was discussing.
I'm not going to allow it to incur tonight. We're not getting into it tonight. I'm going to make my comments, and we're going to adjourn. I want to say that, I want to make it perfectly clear that each individual commissioner has no authority unless we are gathered in this room and voting and deciding together. So no individual commissioner has the ability to direct staff or instruct policy or move any actions without the approval of the entire board. This is where it happens. If you are a commissioner, you are 1/7 of the whole. And when we are in session and when we are together, that is when we make decisions. That's all I have to say. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Eric?
Thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We stand adjourned at 6:41.